Hey family, welcome to House Party. We're in this series called Miracles on Sunday mornings. Just really excited about it. I'm learning a lot and I hope that you are too. And we need to continue to frame these miracles. We know that they were real events, real miracles that happened to real people in real time and space. But that was so long ago. But it's the message in those miracles that speak to us today and are relevant to us today where we are. And we can learn how God's power impacts our lives today. So on Sunday we talked about from John chapter 9 how Jesus healed the man that was born blind. This is a very interesting chapter because John takes the whole chapter, 41 verses, to talk about this miracle and the aftermath of the miracle after the man born blind was healed by Jesus. Remember, the first thing the disciples wanted to know as they walked by this man who was born blind, the first thing they wanted to know is, okay, how'd this happen? Was it the man's sin or the parent's sin that resulted in this? And a lot of people start there first, don't they? There's got to be a reason for why you're living the way you're living and why you're experiencing these problems, those problems. There's got to be sin, right? But that's not always the answer. And it is true that our world is cursed because of sin. We live in a broken, fractured, and flawed world, and we're broken, fractured, and flawed people because of sin. That much is true. But I like the way Jesus flipped this thing. And Jesus looked at the disciples and said, neither. This man and this situation did not come about because of his sin or their sin. He simply said this: he is here to be a demonstration of the power and the work and the grace of God. And I think that's how we need to approach things today. When we see somebody who's struggling, who's fallen, who has an infirmity or a disability, or is in trouble from morning to night, or dealing with a lot of junk, we don't need to sit back and wonder who sinned or what sin did you commit in order to live in this kind of mess. No, we need to flip that like Jesus did and said, no. This is an opportunity for God to show up. This is an opportunity for God to display His grace and demonstrate His power. That's how Jesus approached it. And I think He gives us a lesson in that for us to take today. So I talked about on Sunday how that there are two kinds of people in this story in John chapter 9, and there are two kinds of people in our world. And it's a story about the difference between the unexplainable versus the undeniable, right? And so there are people who are hung up on explanations. They want to know the reasons. They want to know how it happens. They want to know who, what, how, why. And so they're hung up looking for explanations. But when you come into a situation like this where God's power shows up, how can you explain that, right? So there were those who were hung up on explanations, and those were the scribes, the Pharisees, the religious people, just very much like it is today. And let me say this, that while they are on the wrong side of the equation, it's not bad to have a healthy dose of skepticism. And that's not an evil thing. That's not a bad thing. But don't let your skepticism demand answers and explanations in something that's inexplicable so that you ignore what is undeniable. And that's the second kind of people in the world. Those who simply believe because it's undeniable. There's no way you can explain what happened to this man away. It wasn't. It was a miracle of God, and there are those people who just accepted what's undeniable because it's simply that, it's undeniable. So, and they were like in the story, they were like the man who was born blind. He couldn't explain to the scribes and Pharisees why he came up seeing after this man named Jesus made the spitballs and rubbed them on his sightless eyes, and then he went and washed in the pool, right? And he came out and he could see for the first time in his life. How do you explain it? There is no explanation for it. And all these religious leaders were questioning the man, and he didn't have an explanation, but he couldn't deny it either. So these are the two type of people that are in our world. Those that get hung up on explanations, and those who believe because of what's undeniable. And it's important that we don't get hung up on the unexplainables and miss what is undeniable, right? Like this story. So here's my questions for you this week. Take some time after I say every one of these questions and talk about it among your group. This is so great. First question is this: what is undeniable for you with respect to your faith in Jesus Christ? What is it you could say, I don't maybe have all the answers and all the doctrines, don't know all the scriptures, but this is undeniable about my faith in Christ. Undeniable about who Jesus is to me. Talk about that for a while. Next question is this: is there something that has happened in your life that you can identify as a miracle? Something you've experienced that you say, it's just a miracle. And then the second part of the question is this: how do you try to explain it to somebody who has doubts or questions? What has happened to you? How do you try to explain that? Do you have success explaining it to those who have questions about what happened to you? Is it wrong to ask questions? Is it wrong? To have doubts? Do our doubts threaten God? Well, I don't think so. And I don't think it's wrong to ask questions. But when it's undeniable, I think it's important for us to believe, even though we don't have explanations for it. And finally this week, how can you plan this week to strengthen your faith and be more open to the power of God manifesting in you and around you? What's a plan that you can come up with that says, this week I'm going to trust God more, I'm going to amp up my faith, I'm going to have more faith in what God said and what God has done? Is there a way you can do that? How can you be more open to the power of God? Well, listen, once again, it's a joy to be with you in the house party. And the month of July is the month of miracles. So keep your faith high and keep looking to Jesus. God bless you. We'll see you next time.